Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys about how Scientology tried to rip off my grandmother. And before I get into that video, I did want to give a little bit of an update on how I'm doing. A lot of you have been writing to me, emailing me, and in the comment section, been asking me how I'm doing. And if you're not sure why, I did take down two videos, one where I had a mental breakdown. It's not easy to put yourself up in the forefront and put yourself on the front lines when you go up against a group like the Church of Scientology. It's just one bad thing for me after the next, after the next, after the next. And I just haven't caught a break. And I did a follow-up video as well. Know, guys, that I've been going through a ton of stuff, not necessarily related to Scientology necessarily, but I've just been going through the ringer lately. But I did want to let you guys know that I am going to continue the fight against the Church of Scientology. I have struggled with some depression, post-traumatic stress, as well as some other personal related stuff, like I said, with my career and with family and so many other different things. And the reason I took the video down was not because I had a mental breakdown, because I did want to show, you know, the real human side of what it's like to go through, you know, coming out of Scientology, for example, and what it's like picking up and getting back on your feet, the aftermath, if you will. And although my breakdown wasn't necessarily just because of Scientology, it was because, you know, I've been depressed and kind of trying to find my purpose and stuff in life, but that's all stemmed from Scientology. Initially, I, you know, came out to LA to be an actor, and then I started trying to figure out, like, where am I going in my life? I went to hairdressing school, I had a business at one point, so I've been kind of just in this place where I'm trying to, like, figure out, like, where I'm going in my life. So that's kind of what the breakdown was kind of about. And I had a lot of backlash amongst ex-Scientologists. Like, you guys were great, all my subscribers, everyone who's been watching the video, you guys were all amazing, and I love you guys. I'm trying to write back to as many of you as I can who've been writing to check up in on me, but there's some ex-Scientologists who felt like I was, you know, taking the attention off of Scientology and focusing on other things. And it is true, I wanted to focus on exposing Scientology, the abuses, and telling you guys stories about what actually happens inside the organization. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And the reason I decided to make this video today is because my grandmother Laura did pass away about a week and a half ago or so. And I was just in Boston on Saturday to go to her funeral service. So it actually made me think about this story to tell on the channel, because I was just thinking about different memories and different things about my grandmother. And when I was thinking about what video I wanted to make for my channel today, it reminded me of the story about how Scientology was trying to financially extort my grandmother. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a backstory about my relationship with my grandmother. So as you all know, I do have a biological mom and a biological dad, but my grandmother was basically the person who raised me through my childhood. Now, both of my parents were full-time working. My dad was working a very strenuous work schedule, didn't really get to see him too much when I was younger, I guess. And my mom was a full-time accountant at a hospital. So neither one of them could really spend the time off of work because they were both, you know, professionals in their career. So my grandmother was the one who basically raised me. I spent all my summers with, and all my, like, young childhood memories stem from my grandmother. Whether we were in East Boston and my grandfather would take me to go see the planes at the airport, or my grandmother would be cooking me Italian food, or just, you know, all those type of relationships you have with your grandmother. But she was specifically the one who always told me how much she believed in me, how much I could do, like, anything I set my mind out to do. And she was always the one that I would talk to, the one I would confide in. I mean, I even spoke to her probably about 4 weeks ago, and she sounded great, like everything was good. I mean, she was 95 years old, but basically she was getting fluid in her lungs, and they couldn't, like, do anything about the fluid in her lungs and give her some sort of medication because of her liver or her kidney, or there was some reason why she couldn't actually take that medicine, and her organs started shutting down, and then she was dehydrated, so they had to give her fluids, but that only made the situation with the fluids in her lungs worse. So that's basically kind of what happened. And I got a call, you know, from my family in Boston that, you know, she's on morphine and about to pass away. And I didn't actually get a chance to see her probably in the last 2-3 years because I was having issues with some of my family members. That's a whole nother thing. But my grandmother was the person who was, like, a very influential person in my life, who always took care of me, who even as of a few weeks ago was telling me that I could do these different ideas that I was kind of bouncing off of her. So she was always someone to kind of uplift me and, you know, put me in my place when needed, I guess. But she was always the person who I found as the motherly figure to me and someone who's very special. So she was very supportive of me becoming an actor and moving out to LA and doing all that sort of stuff. And I would call her very frequently and she'd want to check up in on me and see how I'm doing and, you know, about my acting career. Like, she was always interested in hearing a lot about what I was doing. And about 2 months after I moved out to LA, as we all know, I got into Scientology at the Celebrity Center. And, you know, that was a big thing because I grew up in a Catholic household. And my grandmother specifically was very, very, you know, Catholic. She was praying every day, always telling me how much she was praying for me. And, you know, we'd go to church together as a kid. So she was a very strict Catholic, I guess we can say. And here I was, like, trying to find my faith, figuring out who I was, and all that sort of stuff. So I got into Scientology, and I'm probably guessing a couple months in, maybe 6 months to a year. I'm not really sure exactly when it was, but it was sometime in 2009, 2010 when the idea got brought up to reg my grandmother. Sorry guys, I'm in the middle of filming a video, of course, and Jeff just got home. I don't know if you can see him. Jeff just got home from work. Everyone always asks about Jeff too, so here he is. He doesn't come on my channel too much anymore, but we're gonna make a video soon. So it took about 6 months to about a year until they decided to start to reg my grandmother, or they at least had the idea about regging my grandmother. Now this is the thing, as we all know, I was young, I didn't have a lot of money, I had credit cards that Scientology was getting out in my name, I had, you know, some jobs that I was doing in regard to doing like stand-in work on television shows and background jobs. But basically, you know, besides being able just to pay my rent, there wasn't much left over, and any of that leftover is going to Scientology versus maybe helping me do things for my acting career or spending the money on more valuable things. I thought this was going to be my spiritual eternity and what was something that was really going to help me. Now, people think, oh, you know, you just got in because you want to be famous or that sort of thing, and it's really not the case at all. I honestly believed in the idea of Dianetics and Scientology and being able to get rid of my reactive mind and going up the bridge. And yeah, of course, on like the first like week or so of Scientology, I was going to get help, you know, with my acting career, but it transformed into becoming a spiritual experience for me because I was trying to find my spirituality and who I was. I came to LA, I'm 18 years old. I don't really know who I am, what I'm supposed to be doing in this world. And Scientology was that thing that kind of just roped me in, said, hey, like, we can help you. We can help you with your depression, anxiety, whatever. Like, we can help you, and in return, that's going to be able to help you be more successful, not just in your career, but your personal life, your relationships with others, your family, and all that sort of stuff. So that all sounded great to me. I didn't have the money on the credit cards. I didn't have the ability to pay for, it was probably my basic book and lectures or my congresses, but it was something to do with purchasing course materials. So I'm sitting in Eric's office, and Eric was one of the initial registrars. He's like a Division 6 registrar, which is kind of like the new persons department in Scientology, but he was still kind of reg me, even though I was with Annie Norlin, who was my main reg, who would extort me for a lot of money while I was, you know, doing like bridge services and like more like advanced services and that sort of stuff. Eric still would reg me for various like materials and that sort of stuff. So Eric went through the whole list of trying to figure out like where there's money. And I tell this story in like the documentary that I did. If you want to call it a documentary, just me talking to camera for 2.5 hours. I told a story about this where they were trying to figure out who I can hit up for money. So they said, like, what about your parents? And like, I'm basically cut off. I have nothing with my parents. So we're going down the list now. Now they're like, you know, do you have like any investments? I'm like, no, I'm 18 years old. Do you have any gold bullion? No, I don't have any gold bullion. Like, you know, if I just had all this gold bullion, you'd think I wouldn't have already cashed it in to go up the bridge. Because again, I believe in this so strongly that this is going to be my spiritual salvation. So I kind of, even though like any normal person could look at this and be like, this kid is being like ripped off and scammed, and how much of an idiot can he be, and whatever, when you actually think of something, yeah, it's very kind of used car salesman, but when you actually think about why you're doing it, it makes sense. Like, I was doing it for my spirituality and my salvation and all this sort of stuff, where it was not just like buying a, you know, Toyota Corolla or something. I was here going to be investing into my future. So if they can kind of find a way to help find the funds, I was kind of all for it at the time. So then they're like, well, what about your grandmother? So they knew how close I was to my grandmother. I told you guys what our relationship was like, just briefly, but I was very close to her, and she was obviously someone that I've talked about in terms of being like a motherly figure to me. So I'm like, no, like I'm not going to ask my grandmother for like $3,000, $5,000, however much money it was at the time. Like I'm not going to rip off my grandmother. And even though at the time I didn't necessarily think of it as ripping off my grandmother, I just didn't think that it was, of course it's not appropriate. Like I'm not going to ask my grandmother for $5,000 to go to Scientology when, again, she's a very strict Catholic, and I've explained that to them. And they're like, well, she doesn't have to know that it's Scientology. We can bill it as Celebrity Center. So it doesn't say on the credit card statement that the money's going to Scientology or the Church of Scientology. They can bill it as Celebrity Center International. And I thought about it for a second, and I'm like, these guys, like, why would they have to do that? And if they have to be able to have a credit card biller that bills it as Celebrity Center instead of Scientology Celebrity Center, says everything that you have to know. There's no way that this is like a real spiritual organization, because if they have to be going to my grandmother, like as I think back on it, they have to go to my grandmother and ask her for $5,000 for booking lectures, and they'll say, oh, like we have like a whole different way we can outline it to her. We can tell her that like you're going on this acting program, and we can say how each and every single one of these books can correlate to something that you'll learn that's applicable for your acting career. We can showcase how this specific, say, book or course has to do about communication. This very specific one has to do about the emotional tone scale. And obviously as an actor, you have to be able to go up and down this emotional tone scale. So it's very important for you to be able to know how to access those different ranges of emotions and identify them. And that would be this course. So on and so forth amongst all the different books. And obviously she's in Boston, I'm in LA, so it's not like she can come to the Celebrity Center, for example, but they said that, you know, we can take her, you know, credit card number like right over the phone. And like right over the phone, like you're going to call my grandmother and tell her like I need $5,000 for my acting career. And, you know, I said she's on a fixed income, like she doesn't have like a ton of money just to be, you know, donating to me in LA or something. And he's like, well, all old people have a little bit of cash that they're sitting on. And she's your grandmother. And obviously she's very close to you, she cares about you, she's going to do anything it takes for you to be able to be successful. And it's like, yes, but to a degree. You know, if I said, if in theory was going to ask my grandmother for money, you know, I need $100 so I can keep my cell phone on in case my talent agent calls me at the time or something, or for my internet so I can submit myself for a job, then yeah, maybe my grandmother would send me $100. But she's not going to send me $5,000 for Scientology books. And even though I was brainwashed at the time, I still wasn't willing to let them speak to my grandmother, have anything. They had her phone number, like they already had like this whole thing like set up and ready, like they have like this two-way phone. So Scientology was basically using these two-way phones and having someone, whether it was the registrar or like your handler or whoever, they'd be on the other line of the phone, and they would use TRs in different ways to kind of manipulate the conversation and basically tell you what to say in order to register them, just as if they were right there in person with you. So of course they're working on statistics and quotas and all these different things. So Scientology is trying to get money in the organization, no matter what they have to do, who they have to ask. And for any normal person, you would think that that would raise a lot of red flags, and you'd be like, hey, like they're crazy, like how could you even think that this is normal? But you know, I grew up in a church in a small town, and I was very trustworthy of religion. Even though I wasn't necessarily believing in my Catholic faith at the time, I trusted that, you know, if I gave money to the Catholic Church, for example, and those priests, and if there was a disaster, for example, or other things going on, that the money was going to be going towards what it said it was. And although Scientology is on a whole different spectrum than what I was used to, I was still an 18-year-old kid, 19 years old, however old I was at the time. I was young. I didn't have a lot of real-world experience, and I thought I was doing something good for the world. I thought I was doing something good for myself, something that would really better me and make me a better person, and just in like an alternative form of therapy by being in Scientology and doing like self-help. And I really thought that what they were telling me was truthful, and I honestly thought they had good intentions. Honestly, like I drew the line when I like, call your grandmother. But even then, even though yeah, maybe she might have had $5,000 to give me at the time or something, but could you imagine what my parents would have thought if they found out that I asked my grandmother for $5,000 to give to Scientology? Like, they just kind of ruin relationships with, you know, your loved ones or friends or whatever, because it's almost like a drug addiction, and you're trying to figure out like who maybe can kind of like enable it or give you some money or being able to give you an intensive of auditing, or who you can maybe borrow or rob or steal from. And that's literally what it was. Scientology knew I didn't even have money, and they're like, well, you can just file bankruptcy if you run out of money. And that's kind of like the mindset. It wasn't as if like, hey, like you have to be responsible with money. It's like, nope, like if you run out of money, just file bankruptcy on your credit cards, and then you can just start all over again, because they'll give you new cards, because then you can't file bankruptcy for another 7 years, and the credit card companies know that, so they're happy to extend you credit, you know, after you file bankruptcy, for example. But I never had to file bankruptcy or do that, for example, in Scientology. But there are people who do, and they lose their homes and they lose their cars, and you know, their life just gets turned upside down because they were sold something by Scientology. Like right in the beginning, they find what your ruin is. They find like that one thing that's holding you back in your life, and once they figure out what that is and they promise a solution to that, that's what kind of ropes someone in. And not only just that, maybe you got some wins from the communication course or something early on, something was true, something really works for you, and then even though you're going along and it may not be working out for you, it's not really going according to plan, you still hold on because you had a little bit of success here, so you hope like as you're going up here and higher, that you're going to be able to achieve something even bigger or greater. And for most people, that never comes. But yeah, you know, it was really sad because I just got back from Boston maybe like 2 days ago for my grandmother's funeral, and I was in the church. I think I'm going to make a separate video about this. So when I was in the Catholic Church, we were kneeling down and praying, and again, I haven't been in the Catholic Church for so many years, but again, I'm not going to not do it. I'm going to go along with it. I even carried up like the Eucharist and everything to the priest, because I knew that my grandmother would really appreciate that and find it special, because, you know, she was obviously very, you know, religious, and I wanted to be able to honor her at her funeral service and do something special in a way, I guess. So I carried up like the holy gifts and that sort of thing. So I did that, but when I'm looking around, I'm thinking, no one's asked me for money. There was not a registrar, and they're not trying to sell me books and materials. You don't have to be scared. Like, people try to find a back exit at Celebrity Center to avoid the regs, because there'd be IAS lined up at the door with your, you know, bookstore reg and your bridge reg and like all these different people, Ideal Org, and there'd be all these different people at the exit, so people would have to find like back exits at Celebrity Center and stuff and kind of avoid being reg for more money. And like these status levels and all this stuff, it was like, even though regardless, like I'm not like preaching for the Catholic Church or for any church or anything for this matter, but just looking at the Catholic Church, for example, no one's, you know, hounding you or knocking at your door, or like if you don't show up, they're not going to come after you. And when you really think about Scientology and how they act and their level of greed and the amount of corruption and control and everything that goes on inside Scientology, and you compare it to any other religion, you see Scientology for what it really is. You as is it. In Scientology, there's the term as is, and you see something exactly for what it is. And that's kind of what I've been doing over the last couple of years with Scientology, is like as-ising it and seeing it for what it really is. So if any of you guys are kind of on the fence or maybe leaving or want to leave or whatever, just kind of separate yourself from a little while. Go to a couple different other churches, kind of see what it's like between Scientology and going into another organization. Like, I'll have a pre-sale pray for you if I was sad about my grandmother. But if I'm sad about my grandmother in Scientology, oh, we can get, you know, 2 intensives of auditing to audit out the, you know, incident. You know, and I paid $2,500 in order to have someone audit me about my grandmother. But so over the last week or two, I've been thinking about my grandmother, obviously, a lot. And when I was thinking about a video to make for my channel, I thought about this, and it's just like, it's just so sick that they would think, both trying to rip off my grandmother who was in her 90s and me who was like a young kid. I had no, you know, idea of what I was really getting myself into, and just knowing that they were going to rip me off and knowing that it doesn't really work just because they want to get their book stats up or whatever, and knowing that they were going to lie intentionally to my grandmother, that they were going to lie to get the money. What kind of religion bases, you know, their principles on lying? So anyways, guys, I just wanted to share that story with you. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Comment down below. I do have a lot more videos coming for you the next week or two. I have my interview coming up probably sometime this week with Karen Presley, who is the former commanding officer of Celebrity Center. She also has a new book coming out as well, so we talk about that, as well as kind of sharing stories between the two of us. From her, who was the commanding officer in charge of Celebrity Center, and me, who was a public Scientologist at CC. We kind of shared our different stories, and we had a really, really interesting conversation, so I can't wait to share that with you guys. If you do like my channel and you like my videos and you want to be able to support me, you can go to patreon.com/StephenMango. The link is also down in the description box below. It'll also give you a little bit more information on that website, how you're able to support me and my channel so I can continue releasing more interviews with others, so I can go to different cities and interview people, be able to release my book. I have a lot of big exciting plans in the works to expose Scientology. So if you're interested in learning more about what I'm working on, go down to patreon.com/StephenMango, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much for watching.